The team from New Zealand are on fire in Glasgow. Absolutely on fire. Take a bow, Geordie Beamish. Take a bow.
Plenty to celebrate with 2 golds and 2 silvers. New Zealand's best ever world indoor campaign, 3rd on the medal tally.
Whoa! Over she goes! And into the lead, Eliza McCartney.
Wellington athlete James Preston should be Olympic bound after breaking a Peter Snell record that has stood for 62 years. Preston has surged to the fastest ever 800 metres run by a Kiwi and the 10th fastest in the world this year.
Good speed. Out. Good throw from Walsh. And Tom Walsh will move into the bronze medal position with that throw of 21.36. And there he is.
We are in a golden era of high-performance sport in New Zealand.
Most of the track and field team for Paris has been named. There's no surefire Peter Snell or Val Adams type superstar, but could this be our best Olympic athletics team lineup yet?
We don't have the big stars, but who knows, come early August, we could have a couple of new big stars.
Hi, I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, I'm talking to athletics commentators Hayden Sherman and Sarah Carley-Ross about who you'll be watching in a black singlet in August perform on the world's biggest sporting stage. The lead-up is looking great, with James Preston confirmed this week after breaking Snell's 62-year-old 800 metres record. George Beamish, a slither off Sir John Walker's 42-year-old record mile. High jumper Hamish Kerr, the world indoor champ with a national record in Glasgow. Pole vaulter Eliza McCartney recovering well from injury. And Zoe Hobbs looking to possibly be the first Kiwi sprinter in an Olympic 100 metres final in 100 years.
I think probably Zoe's success has had a lot to do with people believing in being able to do events that we have traditionally not been so strong at on the world stage. You know, her running sub 11 last year and a windy sub 11 at New Zealand Nationals was just, it really was a glass ceiling breaker, I think, for the sport of athletics. And I think when you look at the 100 metres, the prestige, the depth of the 100 metres, I mean, it's the most expensive ticket in the Olympic program to get to a 100 metre final. And so Zoe's success, then I think, you know, maybe there's ripples across other events.
So it's almost like every event you need to tune in, because we could well have a bolter who jumps up, sneaks a bronze medal, or we could have one of our medal favourites like the big four, Tom Walsh, Hamish Kerr, Eliza McCartney, Geordie Beamish, who could potentially snatch a Olympic title and become one of the big global athletic stars. So that's what makes, I think, this Olympic year so exciting, is that there will be bolters, there will be some, that didn't quite go to plan for that athlete, but that's the nature of sport, and we've got such a big, well-rounded team that there will be some great stories coming out of the team.
Running coach Hayden Sherman has been described as New Zealand's voice of athletics and is a regular commentator at the big athletic meets around the country. He runs a track and field podcast called The Zoom Zoom Show.
I think there is a resurgence. It's probably, and I'd like to frame sort of our team at the moment as having great breadth across all the disciplines, so all the different events, run, jump, throw. So no longer are we just, the middle distance, the Lydiard era from the 60s and into this sort of John Walker era in the 70s. We've got this beautiful spread, male and female, jumpers, throwers, sprinters, distance athletes, all competing at a very high level, and a lot of our team real chances at those medal hopes. So although we don't have the likes of a Dame Val, who's out and out the favourite going into any of our events, we've got a handful of athletes that we really do need to set your alarm clocks for the middle of the night or early morning New Zealand time to watch those Paris Olympics, because we could see some medals coming home from those athletes. And the World Indoors was a really encouraging sign, and our most successful World Indoors ever with 2 golds.
And look at Beamish! Geordie Beamish takes gold for New Zealand. I said somebody might come out of nowhere, and it was Geordie Beamish.
Yes! Hamish Kerr, world champion, lifetime best, Oceania record.
And we're right up there on the medal table, and we don't even have an indoor facility for athletics in New Zealand. So that was a fantastic performance from the team, and it's set the tone for the year to say, look, 2024 could be something special.
So when we're watching at home, there's a lot to catch the eye.
Absolutely. And so you're not just looking at the traditional black singlet in a middle distance event. We're looking at the likes of Zoe Hobbs in that 100 meters. And interesting, it's exactly 100 years since the last time we had a New Zealand sprinter competing in a final at the Olympics. And so that goes back to Arthur Porritt getting bronze in that 100-meter final in 1924, so exactly 100 years ago, in that famous Chariots of Fire 100-meter race. So wouldn't it be amazing if Zoe Hobbs can punch a ticket into that 100-meter final? But then you've got the likes of Eliza McCartney in the pole vault alongside the other two Kiwi girls who are going to be lining up in there as well, Olivia and Imogen. And then Hamish Kerr, of course, in the high jump, and then into the throws as well with our fantastic group of shot putters led by Tom Walsh, of course. But Madison Weshy, she's going from strength to strength as well. And then the youngsters coming through, people like Geordie Beamish in the steeplechase, Ethan Olivier, just the 18-year-old in the triple jump, who's just recently reset his own national record again. He's going to be exciting. Young Connor Bell, who's just 22 years of age in the discus. So a lot of young athletes coming through that we're almost looking like, okay, this is their first Olympics, but we could be seeing them in LA and then in Brisbane in 8 years' time. So it really sets up some good projection forwards, looking to think, okay, where are these athletes going to be if they're already where they are at age 18 or 20, 22?
Yeah, what was in the water a couple of decades ago?
Yeah, well, I think it's been a few things. There's been the pull of the likes of Nick Willis saying to the current crop of runners, hey, we can do this. We can compete with the African juggernaut in the distance races.
Suddenly I heard these little footsteps cutting behind me, and what do you know, Sam Tanner comes storming home in the last 50, so really excited to see Sam continue what will hopefully be the next great middle distance runner from New Zealand.
When he got bronze in 2008, which got upgraded to silver, now arguably should have been gold, with the eventual gold medalist since being busted for doping as well. That really broke something in the New Zealand psyche, saying we're no longer living in the glory days of Walker and Snell and Quacks. We're actually got a hope for the now.
Nick Willis has had a pretty special role in kind of my, I guess, eyesight towards the Olympics, and that's one of the reasons why I want to be a runner. Yeah, it's definitely pretty special to start to follow in his footsteps.
So that medal was a real breaking of the shackles, I think, for the New Zealand running community. And then we saw, Kim Smith in the female side of things around the same time, setting New Zealand records across the board from, I think, the mile right up to the marathon. And now we're starting to see those who grew up watching Kim Smith and Nick Willis come into the fore. So Geordie Beamish, Maya Ramsden, who's based in the States, she's just graduated at Harvard. Very smart cookie and a very fast runner.
Is she in? Because she was on the verge of selection.
Yes, so she's not quite in yet. She was 0.08 off the standard for the 1500 metres, so just missed it by a whisker, but did set a new New Zealand record in the 1500 metres, so beating Nikki Hamblin's 2011 mark of 4:04 by 2 seconds, actually. So really crushed that record. So she's right on the cusp, and so early season she broke that record. I would expect her to find a nice fast race, and she's got about 30 days to do it. To set that Olympic standard. So essentially, for those who don't know how that criteria works, there's two ways of getting into the Olympics. One, you can hit a time or a distance if you're in the throws or jumps. And if you hit that mark, it's almost certainly going to get nominated to the NZOC, who then select you in the team.
And that's the James Preston route, isn't it? Because he hadn't been named in the first 15, but he's a shoo-in now.
Absolutely, yeah.
And in fact, late this week, James Preston had his place in the team confirmed.
So he's got the time, got the mark. Maya Ramsden, unfortunately, just outside that mark by the smallest of margins, but you'd like to think that she gets it. The other way into the team is if you gather points and get that world ranking low enough so that the selectors say, okay, you could get a top 16 performance based on your current world ranking. That's a less likely route because of our very high standard that we have in New Zealand for getting into a New Zealand Olympic team. And particularly it seems to punish the runners more so than the field athletes. So running obviously just being so deep, it's very hard to convince the selectors that you're a genuine top 16 candidate in the 100 meters or the 1500 meters or the marathon. So unless you've got that mark, it can be really difficult in the running events to get through based on world ranking. But we'll see. It's one guarantee in New Zealand year, there will be controversy in an Olympic year. There will be controversy about New Zealand athletes who are at home rather than over at the Olympic Games on a start line somewhere.
Yeah, because there has been some criticism about the selection regime. Do you feel it's a fair one, or are there personalities involved? Because you sort of don't know who you're picking for the future, and there are sort of other aspects to it like that, aren't there?
Yeah, exactly. And they do have an allowance for if you are a young up-and-coming athlete, if you haven't been to a World Majors, then potentially they will be a little bit more lenient. But it goes right back to the year 2000, where I actually attended those games. I was just a young teenager watching from the stands. And I remember watching, Beatrice Faumuina, Hamish Carter just having less than ideal days. And I think that left a bit of a mark on the Olympic movement in New Zealand, where we want to make sure that we don't have another repeat of Sydney. And so the standard was raised and say, you're going to have to hit a very high bar, guys and girls, if you want to be going to the Olympics. We're going to have one of the highest bars out of all the Olympic governing bodies around the world. We're going to set that bar very, very high to ensure that the likelihood of getting good performances is going to come. Now, I think that works quite well in sports like rowing, maybe track cycling, sailing, where arguably the global depth in the event isn't as deep as, say, a football or a 100-meter sprint, which, almost every kid on the planet has entered a 100-meter sprint in some point in their life, and most kids have touched a football as well. So when you're looking at those events that have incredible depth, it just means that you need to be at this amazing standard in order to just get to the Olympics. And I think that's where we do see the really tough end of the stick in trying to qualify and convince the selectors that you're top 16, say in the 100 meters. And so Zoe Hobbs, who has punched her ticket to Paris, she has got the initial nomination and yet to be confirmed in the selection from NZOC. But she's absolutely had her work cut out for her over the last 4 years since Tokyo, and missing out. She's had to just continually break the New Zealand record, break the Oceania record, be the fastest woman from this corner of the globe in order to say to the selectors, look, I deserve to be there. It's great that she stayed hungry despite missing those Olympics. But you look on the male side, Eddie Osei-Nketiah, he has the national record, but he's actually turned away from the sport, said, no, the standard's too high. I can't make a profession out of this unless I can guarantee that I'm going to the Olympic Games. So I'm going to go and play football in the States, American football in the States. So massive loss on one hand with Eddie, but on the side of Zoe, it's a wonderful fairy tale story to see her go from strength to strength. So the system is definitely not perfect. It comes down to how much money have we got in the kitty and where do we allocate it. I can definitely think of some improvements, but it's difficult to see how you do those improvements in a just way across all the different Olympic sports. Because if you lowered the standard on, let's say, the 100 meters, then what do the rowers say, or the track cyclists, when they're saying, well, that person's got in and they're ranked 50th in the world, yet I'm ranked, I don't know, 33rd, and I don't get in. So yeah, there's a lot of discussions to be had. It's not perfect, but it's meaning that we are a country that's doing pretty well on the medal table.
When it comes to the big show in Paris, everyone will be there and everyone will be gunning to be that nation. And I think New Zealand is, certainly putting their hand up to have a really good showing.
Sarah Carley-Ross is a former Olympic heptathlete, Athletes Commission Chair on the NZOC, writer for Newsroom's Locker Room, and also now a podcaster on women's sport.
If the results from the year are anything to go by, and particularly I think Glasgow, the rest of the world could not believe New Zealand's success. I was speaking with Rob Walker, who's the World Athletics lead commentator, and he was like, what is going on with you Kiwis?
How is this happening? Are we all on the New Zealand equivalent of turtle soup?
I think that particularly in the case of Preston and Beamish, those are juniors who were promising juniors who are coming into their potential of what was always promised. And I look back at Preston and his run actually at New Zealand Nationals this year. He was a great junior going to World Juniors, but then he had this time in the wilderness. And I think, that at New Zealand Nationals when he ran 1:44.87 and a horrendous Wellington Southerly, which just came over the track at exactly his race, showed that he was the guy to beat Snell's record. And I don't think it's quite just got the coverage that it really deserves, because we're talking about the athlete of the century for New Zealand last century. And this is a guy who's come out and has beaten that in Germany, 1:44.04. And within the 24-hour period, Geordie Beamish runs within the New Zealand mile record, who is Sir John Walker's. So what's happening? I think it's just two athletes, those two particular athletes. And don't forget Sam Tanner, who's really been the middle distance kind of star after Nick Willis. They're finding their time. They're in very fast shoes. They're in great training environments. And they've seen the likes of Tanner and the likes of Willis do something extraordinary from New Zealand. So they're saying, hey, why not me? And they're doing it on the world stage.
Now, let's pick up on Sarah's very fast shoes comment there, because she meant it literally. She's talking about carbon plate shoes.
Over the last decade, there's been a technological revolution in running, one powered by shoes that can give runners who can pay up a leg up.
The one that started it all is the Nike Alpha Fly. So utilizing a few different technologies, carbon fiber plate that's wedged inside of it. These are, little cheat codes in terms of adding extra efficiency.
Hayden Sherman has a pair of the new tech shoes.
The shoes they have just dominated conversation since 2016 when we first saw them out in the competitive zone, and in that Rio Olympic marathon, the top three, gold, silver and bronze, all took home the medals and all were wearing these prototype shoes. Since then, everyone's got the shoes and other brands have caught up with Nike, and it seems to be a more level playing field, but those times just seem like there's world records being broken all over the show. There's kind of two elements to it. One is the shoes are great for training. They tend to mean that your legs don't get beaten up as much. So you can absorb more training at the pace that you want to be running. So that inevitably means you're going to be fitter. So there's that training element. Then in the race, you've got responders and non-responders. So some people seem to be responding brilliantly to this new shoe technology, and some not as much, and maybe even detrimental. So there's a bit of a luck of the draw in terms of the on-the-day performance, how you're going to respond to that. But certainly it's helped. It seems like runners of today are fitter because of the shoes. How much, we're not exactly sure. And you ask a retired runner, they'll tell you the shoes are making a massive difference. You ask a current competitive runner and they'll say, oh, it makes a tiny difference.
Other differences from Snell and Walker's day include advancement in injury prevention and in nutrition. But mentally, Sarah says, it's having role models that really helps.
Certainly when you talk to athletes, they have that mentality of, well, if he's doing what, why can't I? And I've got the passion and I've got, somewhat of a talent, then I'm prepared to, grind it out for a few years, potentially in the wilderness, to get to the world stage, to get into the fast races, which will then produce the times that these guys have produced.
Now, when you're talking about they've been in the wilderness, a lot of these athletes seem to be overseas. They don't really make an appearance in New Zealand for quite some time. Is that what's happening, that they're really honing their talents in places like the States?
It's really a mixed bag if you look across the Olympic team, actually, that they've already named. Preston, for example, is based in New Zealand. Sam Tanner, based in New Zealand. George Beamish is probably the exception, as well as Ethan Olivier, who is a triple jumper who's based in South Africa. And he actually broke the New Zealand triple jump record, his own record, in the weekend as well, 17:01, first New Zealand jumper over 17 metres. And you've got then our three big throwing boys, Jacko, Tom and Connor. They do spend a large portion of the year overseas, but for the majority of they would say domiciled in New Zealand until the European summer.
And do they have to be in New Zealand for a certain amount of time to qualify for New Zealand, or is that not a thing?
No, they can be overseas based.
What are we best at?
I think over the last few years, our throwers have really stood up. I think Tom Walsh, 2 bronze medals in the last 2 Olympics. He'll have his work cut out for him in Paris with the likes of Ryan Krauser, Joe Kovacs, and also there's an Italian who's throwing really high 22s this year. So he'll have to work very hard to get on the podium. Also, the likes of Hamish Kerr has been a revelation in the last few years, I think, for the New Zealand public. People often say to me, oh, what about that high jump guy? I'm like, yeah, he's great, isn't he? And, he was 10th in Tokyo. But since then, this year, he went on to win the World Indoors 236. He's probably, at this stage, he's a better indoor jumper than outdoor jumper. But he knows now he can clear those heights. So really looking forward to seeing him. Maddie Weshi, also, within that throwing sort of group, 4th at World Indoors this year. And she is someone who always shows up at World Championships, Olympic Games level, at pinnacle events. She always does a personal best, which is amazing. And I think that you can't rule out, if Eliza McCartney is healthy, then it's game on for her as well.
Has Val Adams' departure left a big hole, or have we got these people coming up sort of close on her heels?
I think we have. Like the success of the World Indoors team really showed that we've got this new generation coming, apart from Tom Walsh. I wouldn't call him new generation. But the thing is, where they're coming from, I think is really interesting. Like, high jump, pole vault, then the throws, that's always going to be a good anchor for us. But Zoe in the sprints, Geordie in the 1500, we've got across the board as opposed to being super targeted. And I think that that's the exciting piece for me. And the exciting piece is that, in addition to that, is that breadth of events then inspires all different types of people to take up athletics and say, hey, maybe I could one day be at this level or just do the sport for fun. The Olympics is just an environment where anything can happen. If you get momentum in the team like they did in Rio and they ended up with 4 medals, then something like this can happen. And I think that kind of happened in Glasgow as well, with that sort of rolling momentum of success, building success. And I honestly believe we're worth more than 1 medal at this stage, and I really hope that I'm right.
The athletics program in France starts on August the 2nd. That's it for this week. The Details supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was engineered by Mark Chesterman and produced by Davina Zimmer and Gwen McClure. Thanks to Sarah Carley Ross and Hayden Sherman. I'm Alexia Russell. Go well.